You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for Cheesehead TV and the Packers Post, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, OTAs still going on. Kind of nice to see the team eager to get ready for the 2024 season. But first, I know you have a little message from our sponsor.
Yeah, for people like you and I, Gil, who are eager for that 2024 season, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Yeah, we're getting a little closer. It's obviously OTAs. It's something, but it's still a whole lot of nothing, and it just gets you. It's just a nice little teaser going into training camp and getting closer to training camp for us super fans of the team.
Yeah, it's a teaser, and you got to sort of roll with it. But you know what? In a few weeks, there'll be no teaser, and it'll be all quiet once you get to the end of June and into early July before training camp actually gets underway. So I'll deal with the OTAs and the mini camp. And, look, everything that is said this time of year, you got to take with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. Everybody looks fast. Everybody looks better than they did last year. What is the coach going to say? Yeah, he stinks. He has no chance of making my team. It's not going to be like that. So everyone tries to be optimistic, but there are things we can learn from listening to the players and the coaches and sort of reading between the lines this time of year.
Yeah, and before we get to that, and I was just thinking where it's kind of like Jackie Moon and semi-pro. Everybody love everybody. Everybody loves everybody this time of year. Where That's it's right. Everybody loves their own guys, and they don't want anybody else on their team but their own guys. So ELE, everybody love everybody. Just a little bit of Jackie Moon in there. But speaking of guys, though, who have been talking and reading between those lines, where Jaire Alexander, he was coming off of probably his worst NFL season as a pro since coming out of the draft out of Louisville, dealt with some injuries. He had that coin toss situation in Carolina, which resulted in a one-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the team. He spoke to reporters on Wednesday after OTAs, started off by saying that the best corner in the league has entered the chat, so he definitely hasn't lost any confidence there, Gil. But it just very much seems like the impression I got right away, he is making it more about the team than himself right now. And that's a really good thing from one of your best players who had a pretty tumultuous and pretty turbulent 2023 campaign.
It is good to see that, first of all, it's good to see that he's still Jaire. Yeah. I mean, you can't
lose that. You can't lose that.
No, because, that cockiness, that confidence, that brashness, that's part of his confidence. That's what makes him the player that he is. You don't want to lose it, but you do want to channel it constructively.
Yeah.
And it seems like he really is making that effort right now. And I think, look, everybody makes mistakes in life. Clearly, what Jaire did at that coin toss was not his best moment with the team. At least he seems to be learning from that mistake. And, he talked to Matt LaFleur, and he probably had some conversations with Brian Gutekunst since that happened. And he seems to have reacted to it as well as you can. And seeing him saying all the right things and seemingly taking on more of a leadership kind of position at this stage was very encouraging.
The Packers are still one of the youngest teams in football, but he is the veteran leader in that secondary. He really is. Where, you brought in Xavier McKinney, but Jaire's been in the league a little longer. He's been with the Packers longer than any defensive back on this team as well. So he's the guy. He's the alpha in that secondary. He really is. And like you said, though, where it's not – everyone makes mistakes in life. Where nobody's perfect. How do you respond? How do you learn from it? How do you fix it? How do you move on and learn from it and make yourself better? And Jaire seems to have made a very concerted effort towards just bettering himself, and it just seems very clear right now. It seems like he's all in with the new defensive staff, with Jeff Hafley, the new defense, the new strength staff, and everything. He had mentioned too when he spoke to the media how the new defensive and strength coaches they have made him happier. He feels more connected to the team. Said the new staff's been easier to work with compared to the past. Now, he didn't really throw Joe Barry, the former defensive coordinator, under the bus directly, but like you said, Gil, read between the lines.
Yep.
Clearly there was friction there.
Well, look, he may not have thrown him directly under the bus, but by saying he likes it better now, draw your own conclusions, right? And look, you mentioned everybody makes mistakes. It's how you respond. That's the famous quote from Vince Lombardi. A champion is not someone who never gets knocked down. I'm paraphrasing now, but someone who's, going to get back up after they do get knocked down. And hopefully Jaire Alexander will prove that he has that mettle to be able to do that. And
you just got to think where if he's already being outspoken, where how much he's loving the things that the defense that Jeff Hafley wants to do, he's going to get to play his style. He's going to be aggressive, in your face. And that's exactly how Jaire Alexander wants to play. And that's what he's best at, is when he is in your face aggressive. The guy is one of the highest paid corners in football for a reason. It's because he is damn good at what he does. And his strength is being aggressive and getting in the opposing receivers' faces and just frustrating the crap out of his opponent 60 minutes a game. He's done it so many times in his NFL career. He's done it with Justin Jefferson a few times too in Minnesota. And it's great entertainment, obviously, if you're on the right side of it. But hopefully Jaire Alexander, he gets back to that level, because he's a damn fun player when he is playing at that level and playing with that confidence.
He is. And if you take it a step further, he is the closest thing they have to a known quantity in that secondary at cornerback right now. Keyshawn Nixon in the slot. Yeah, he was kind of up and down last year. Mm-hmm. We don't know if Eric Stokes is going to be healthy ever again. I mean, he looks good so far in OTAs, but everybody looks good so far in OTAs. Look, I don't mean to knock it. I'm encouraged by the fact that he seems fast, which is what, the coaching staff was saying. But can he get back to the way he was as a rookie? That's a big question mark. Carrington Valentine, 7th-round pick, was last year a mirage, or does he take a step forward? Can he be a quality starter in the NFL? A healthy Jaire Alexander is sort of the bedrock of the Packers cornerback room, and they need a good season from him if this team is going to succeed this year.
And you had mentioned Eric Stokes, the other first-round pick on the other side of the field, where Matt LaFleur said he thinks that Stokes is as good as he's ever seen him, both mentally and on the field. And he doesn't want to have crazy high expectations. He wants to temper them a bit, but LaFleur sounds like he truly means what he is saying, where Eric Stokes, he had so many issues his second year where he didn't have that good of a season to start. Then he has a nasty foot and leg injury that ends his season. It plays a factor in 2023. And Stokes, remember, he also joined Christian Watson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison to figure out his hamstring issues this offseason. And Stokes had said it stemmed from his surgically repaired foot from that brutal injury suffered in Detroit in November of 2022, and which resulted in further hamstring and calf and leg injuries, and his calf and leg and hamstring just essentially not being strong enough. So you had Christian Watson, who had one hamstring and one leg that was too strong, and Eric Stokes, one leg that wasn't strong enough.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned how Jaire Alexander likes to get in people's faces. Eric Stokes is at his best when he can press at the line of scrimmage or near the line of scrimmage. The change from Joe Barry to Jeff Hafley should benefit both of these players and play more to their strengths, and that is encouraging.
And Stokes also echoed Jaire, saying how much he loves new defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. He said, makes you want to go out there, have fun, go a million miles an hour. I'm paraphrasing right there. Stokes said Hafley, though, he said that he'll take the bullet up to the players to go out there and just play and have fun. And it just sounds like where Jeff Hafley's got these guys back. He's going to do his best to put his guys in the best spot. Eric Stokes sounds like he's bought in. Jaire Alexander sounds like he's bought in. It's all talk right now, but if Eric Stokes plays as well as everyone's talking him up this offseason, he's going to be a very rich man next year. Because remember, this is a contract year for him. He's due to be a free agent after this season. So he's got a lot to prove. But if he can play up to that first round status, Gil, this is going to be a really, really fun defense for the Green Bay Packers in 2024.
No question. I am hoping sincerely to see Stokes maximize his potential. What we saw from him as a rookie was so tantalizing, where you could imagine the speed that you would have with Alexander on one side and Stokes on the other side, and Keyshawn Nixon in the slot. You know, there aren't too many faster trios of starting cornerbacks in the league. It would be great to see them all playing at their best, and let's hope that they can reach those goals under Jeff Hafley. And
don't forget, behind those guys, too, you got a guy like Carrington Valentine who looks like he belongs, and a guy who is confident and plays with a lot of swagger, and didn't look overwhelmed at all last year when he was pressed into duty because of the Stokes injury, because of the Rasul Douglas trade. You drafted a couple guys in Javon Bullard and Evan Williams who may move around at that nickel corner spot. You have another guy in Corey Ballantyne who played very admirably in place of Jaire Alexander, a guy who was really, really impressive for a guy who's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. It's still kind of a fringe roster player. There's some good talent and depth there. It's going to be a fun camp to see. Eric Stokes is going to be the guy to watch, though, obviously, because you just hope he can get back to that first-round level. You wonder, though, where if you're Matt LaFleur, Gil, do you play Eric Stokes in any preseason games, or do you just not even risk it?
I would play him a little bit. I would get him into one preseason game and maybe play him a couple of series. I want to see how he responds under game conditions. And, I understand the risk, but you know what? If he's not prepared for week one and he goes out there and gets hurt anyway, like, I'd rather that happen in the final preseason game than in week one or week two.
So, then you'll have a little more time to plan for it. You have a week and a half or so to plan for that first game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you know what you got behind where Carrington Valentine isn't going to go away. That's a guy who went toe-to-toe with Jamar Chase during joint practices last year in Cincinnati, and you know he's going to be ready for some training camp battles coming up this year. Speaking of the offense, though, if we go to the running game, Josh Jacobs, the new coming running back, he was dealing with some hamstring issues last week. He was back at OTAs this week doing drill work, but no 11-on-11 teamwork. Spoke to the media on Wednesday and said when he arrived in Green Bay, he had texted former Packer wide receiver Davante Adams, joked with Davante asking if he was thinking about coming back. And Davante's been very public, praising his time in Green Bay, and Jordan Love as well, and the receivers in Green Bay. But he has publicly said also, time and time again, he has no regrets leaving and joining the Raiders and is committed to Vegas. But Gil, that just poses the question what Josh Jacobs kind of brought up, which is silly. But if somehow Davante Adams became available and he said, I want out, I want to be traded, and I want to go back to Green Bay, would you take him?
You know, it's a tough question. I love Davante Adams. He was a great Packer. Could he help this team? I think there's no question about that.
Yeah.
The question to me is, it's a big cap hit, number one. And number two, it's not, you've got this great, young, cohesive group together. Does Adams disrupt that chemistry or add something to that chemistry? And that's something that, Brian Gutekunst would have to answer. It's a hypothetical question, but I would tend to say as time goes by, the older that Davante Adams gets, the less likely it would make sense to bring him back.
And if you were asking me that question last year, I'd say absolutely. Yeah. I would love to have him back. And I love Davante. I have no ill will against Davante Adams. He was a Raider fan growing up. He always wanted to play for the Raiders. The quarterback situation was a bit murky, and he just wanted to go. And it's a bummer because he obviously went to the Raiders. He wanted to go play with his old college buddy, Derek Carr, who's no longer with the Raiders. And they told him to hit the road and not come back anymore. But with Davante, though, if this was the question last year, I'd be like, absolutely, I'd want him back. But you have a young, talented group. You have a lot of guys who are really, really good. And not just – I don't think these are guys who are flashes in the pan. Bo Melton showed you something. Malik Heath, he showed you something. Jaden Reed is a stud. Romeo Doubs is a stud. Christian Watson is a stud. Who else am I missing? I feel like I'm missing someone else right now. Help me, Gil. Help me. Christian Watson,
Wicks,
Romeo Dobbs. Thank you. Dontavian Wicks, who seems like a baby Davante as well. Yep. But the thing is, it's the guy's entering his 11th season already in the NFL. He's in his 30s. It's getting towards the end for him. And I would have signed him to that 5-year extension if he agreed to the same contract in Green Bay that he did with the Raiders. I would have been totally fine with that at the time. But now it's just a matter of the cap hit. It's a business. And a guy who's entering year 11, I'm not so sure about it. But I would say don't ever get your hopes up as a Packer fan that Davante would come back. I think it's not necessarily he's anti-Green Bay. I just think the guy commits to a contract. He sticks with it. He was probably the most underpaid receiver his last 2 years in Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't hold
still well paid, but not by standards of what he was producing.
Correct. Yeah, he didn't have the money like Tyreek Hill got. He didn't have that big money that he definitely deserved. And with that, though, he still kept playing. He didn't hold out for more money. No. He went out there and he played. And that's just the way that he's wired. Is once he's class all the way. The guy is great with the media. He's always won awards from the Packer media for being the most cooperative player with the media. He's class all the way. He commits to what he signed. So as much as I'd love to see Davante back in the Packer jersey, I just don't think – I think the time's passed where I don't think it would ever happen again. And I'd be open to it if it did somehow happen one day. But if it doesn't, I get it too.
You know, to me, in like another year or two, if the Raiders let him go for some reason and you can sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal at a reasonable rate to finish his career in Green Bay and maybe be the 3rd or 4th receiver to add a little veteran influence to a young room. And remember, you're not going to be able to keep all these guys forever.
No.
So, you know, down the road, if he wants to come back and he's not making as much money as he's making now and he is willing to play, you know, more of a role player kind of a situation, I would love to have him back. He's class all the way. He works hard. He's very smart and knows the nuances of the game and the position. But right now, I just don't think it works.
It's kind of crazy, though. Davante's contract, his cap hit is getting passed by guys right now around the league where I believe Jalen Waddle with the Dolphins just signed a 3-year, $84 million deal. That's $28 million a year for a wide receiver. And then Nico Collins with the Texans just got a $24 million a year contract extension. These Packer guys, luckily, they're not eligible for – these receivers aren't eligible for extensions yet, but it's going to get pricey in that receiver room very quickly. And it's just something where, you can't really load up your cap on the receiver room. You got to just ride it out with the guys you have right now and the cheap salaries that they're playing on. But let's get back to Josh Jacobs. Again, he was dealing with that hamstring issue last week, didn't participate in any teamwork. Josh Jacobs did speak to the media. Besides the Davante comments, what else stood out to you about Josh Jacobs this past week?
I just like his approach. You know, I think one of the reasons I think they got Josh Jacobs is that his leadership qualities kind of remind people of Aaron Jones in some ways. And I think that struck me, just the way he talked and the way he was looking to lead and really contribute to the organization and the team. I am impressed with the way he's presenting himself so far.
And he was credited as one of the guys who he was on some bad Raiders teams and there's so many issues in that organization with the John Gruden stuff that happened. And then Rich Bisaccia, they don't bring him back. Josh McDaniels obviously was a disaster and an absolute train wreck. And Josh Jacobs was credited as one of those guys who kept that locker room together there. He was credited as one of those linchpins for the Raiders, very much like Aaron Jones for the Packers. So when I heard that, and all I remember from Josh Jacobs literally, or all I remember from Josh Jacobs from when Hard Knocks was with the Raiders. And Josh Jacobs was never on camera in the meeting rooms. You know why? Because he covered up his face in front of the cameras. He always did. He literally had his shirt pulled up, and it was covering his face completely. And it's a guy where it's like, oh, man, is it, you know, you're just thinking, is this a – and I love Marshawn Lynch, but is this a guy who's like Marshawn Lynch who's going to refuse to talk to the media and not cooperate with the media? But the guy's all smiles. He seems like a very positive player, someone who's going to have a positive impact on this team, a guy who's just going to go out there and work and play ball. Yeah,
and that's what you need, really. And to me, again, the fact that he reminds a lot of people of Aaron Jones in that respect. You add the fact that he's 3 years younger. And, you heard Matt LaFleur talking a little bit about Jacobs that, he's capable of being the workhorse back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing Aaron Jones was not really capable of because of his size. So, yeah, he's only an inch taller than Aaron Jones, but he's 15, 20 pounds heavier than Aaron Jones was. The fact that I don't think Matt LaFleur wants to give one guy 90% of the carries. Those days in the NFL are behind us. The Packers haven't had anyone do it really since Eddie Lacy used to do it. So you're going back 10 years. But if you're late in a game and you need your running back to run that 4-minute offense and close it out, the fact that you don't have to worry every once in a while of giving Josh Jacobs the ball 25 times in a game and say, oh my gosh, he won't be ready next week or that's a big strategic difference that you can have if he stays healthy. And already, as we see, he's a little dinged up, but if he could stay healthy, that's a big difference, an advantage that he has over Aaron Jones.
It is funny how a constant criticism, and it seemed like it was with the McCarthy. McCarthy was a lot worse than LaFleur with it, was that Aaron Jones didn't get the ball enough. And because when he got the ball, good things happen most of the time. But like you said, we're past the days of one running back getting 90% of the carries. It's very much running back by committee. You look at the 49ers where, they got Christian McCaffrey. That's a different level type of player. That guy's the best running back in football. He's head and shoulders above everyone. But that system, though, you look at Mike McDaniel, his system in Miami, and Sean McVay with the LA Rams, and LaFleur with the Packers, where you got to have a good stable of running backs, guys who will just always be fresh and can always get someone who could always give you something out of the backfield. But I do agree, though, where I think Josh Jacobs, being 26 years old, he does have a little more wear and tear on him than most 26-year-old running backs in the NFL. But he's a guy who can do it. He's a guy, I feel like, who you're going to be able to trust late and who could carry the ball 25, 30 times a game if need be. It's going to be very exciting to see how they incorporate him in this offense. And then you mix him with rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd, with A.J. Dillon, with Emmanuel Wilson, whoever else is back there. It's just going to be an interesting competition. I don't anticipate Josh Jacobs will play too much during the preseason.
No,
his job is clearly locked up. He's guaranteed for this year. After that, though, then it's showtime, and I'm excited to see what happens with Josh Jacobs.
I am too, and I am optimistic that he's going to be productive. And don't be surprised if he catches more passes out of the backfield also than maybe what Aaron Jones did. And again, not to knock Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones.
Oh, me too.
He was always on a play count. It was, you were always just, we want to save him. We don't want to overwork him. And, again, I understand the wear and tear, but every once in a while, you want to close out a game. You want your best back to just be pounding that rock and picking up those key 4 or 5 yard plays that keep the chains and the clock moving so you can finish out the game.
Only time will tell to see if it's a good signing by Brian Gutekunst in the front office. But speaking of injuries and other updates, obviously Josh Jacobs dealing with that hamstring issue. Lucas Van Ness, the second-year edge out of Iowa, he broke his thumb. Head coach Matt LaFleur said he broke it a little bit, and it was his words, not mine, not yours, just the tip. Just the tip. It doesn't sound like it's major because he just broke the tip.
No comment at all.
This is a family-friendly podcast.
That's right. Yeah, we're tell Matt LaFleur that, right?
Here's a tip. Here's a tip for you. Don't eat yellow snow. That's the tip that we're talking about. So, other injury news, though, guys who weren't at OTAs, tight end Tyler Davis, he's still recovering from an ACL. Zach Tom and Tucker Kraft both obviously not participating in OTAs. They're dealing with recovering from torn pecs. Keaton Oladapo, one of those rookie safeties that they drafted this year, he's from Oregon State. He was out of OTAs on Wednesday when it was open to the media, unknown with why he was sitting out. Rashawn Gary, Elton Jenkins, Preston Smith were not at OTAs this week. LaFleur joked they were really pissed at him, but they were actually excused absences, and LaFleur knew about this ahead of time. Who knew Matt LaFleur had a sense of humor, huh, Gil?
Yeah, maybe Mrs. LaFleur, but that's it's good to see. You know what, though? It means he's relaxed and comfortable with where he is right now. And I think, he's been here since, 2019. He knows the members of the media locally. Yep. He's comfortable. He's confident. And I think it's good to see that sense of humor coming out.
And guess what? Gary, Jenkins, Preston, they all arrived in Matt LaFleur's first year in Green Bay as well. So they've all been together. I think they got a good relationship and a good rapport between those four. Other notes, though, Jordan Morgan, the rookie first-round pick out of Arizona, left tackle at Arizona. He was getting reps last week, a left tackle and right tackle. Got some reps at left guard with the ones at OTAs with Elton Jenkins not being there this week. Sean Ryan also got some reps at center. So they're really doing a lot to play musical chairs on that offensive line. And, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's only OTAs, but I like that they're just trying to figure out who's best where and what their best five is. I really, truly believe Elton Jenkins is the only one who's got, and Zach Tom are the only ones who have starting jobs safe. Outside of that, those other three jobs are up for grabs, and I love it. And I feel like this year, more than any other year, it's the best five that are going to be out there, and that's it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Zach Tom's job is safe. Yeah, but we don't know which job it's going to be necessarily.
Yeah.
So, the best five could mean he's at guard or at center, or he could still stay at right tackle. So lots of moving parts. The only look, I like the cross-training thing. I did an article about it for Cheesehead TV that was published on Thursday, so definitely check that out. My only concern is, especially with a younger player like Jordan Morgan, cross-train him, let him learn these things, but make sure once you pick a position for him that he at least gets enough reps at that position to be ready to play if he either wins a starting job or is called upon to be in a game.
Oh, for sure. And Zach Tom, I will say this, where I would be totally fine with them keeping him at right tackle.
Me too.
Because last year he left that San Francisco playoff game, that divisional round game in Santa Clara. When he left that game with a concussion, you could feel it. You could feel the presence. It was just a completely different story. And he is just so steady at right tackle. And I feel like obviously you have a lot of guys who are very dominant interior defensive linemen. I feel like Zach Tom, unless Jordan Morgan, they feel like he can give you the same amount of good execution and talent at right tackle in comparison to Zach Tom. Then you push Zach Tom inside. But don't mess with something that works really well either. That's just my 2 cents.
I agree. He graded out as their best offensive lineman overall, and by far their best run-blocking offensive lineman.
Yeah.
I would be hesitant to move him. Now, look, if there's injuries, Josh Myers goes down, you would need to move somebody to center. I could understand that. That's an emergency. That's, a need. But overall, I think Zach Tom has been a really good right tackle. And if I'm Zach Tom or his agent, I want to get paid as a right tackle, regardless of where they line me up. So I don't know if I'd be thrilled with the move if I were him.
Going to be interesting business decisions coming up. But if Zach Tom right now, stay away from the bench press. We need you out there on Sundays coming up this fall and this winter. And hopefully down in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, just don't go. Take it easy on the pecs on the Hurricanes down at Bourbon Street. Hopefully we're down there in New Orleans come up in February. I'm just cross my fingers, cross my T's, dot my I's. I'm hoping for the best. But Gil, you talked about, you were teasing what you have online for Packers Post at Cheesehead TV. What else you got besides the offensive line articles that you have going?
Well, I talked about cross-training in that Cheesehead article. So Colby Wooden also ended up moving outside at OTAs. And again, we mentioned Van Ness is hurt. Gary and Preston Smith are not there. So it could partially be for, just need for bodies at practice. But he's put on some weight, and it wouldn't shock me to see him get some reps there at some point in the preseason at least. So I talked about that. And then more stories from OTAs. Got a piece on the Packers Post about Jaden Reed, injury updates, and a whole lot more. So we're covering OTAs, and it's an exciting time of year, especially with the team so optimistic right now.
Colby Wooden, I remember when he was drafted, he seemed like an undersized defensive tackle, but a guy who has a big frame that you could fill out. And I could see that guy being a guy you can move all along the D line. So that's very interesting. And I think that's something where it's not out of the realm of possibility that Colby Wooden could be kind of that chess piece who you kind of move all up and down, all across that defensive line, where it's going to be four guys with hands in the ground this year, which I really like. Put more guys on the line of scrimmage and let the back end do their thing and let 4 guys go do their thing up front in a passing situation all the time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that 4-man front operates. And we're getting closer. We're almost in June. Training camp now, about 8 weeks away?
Yeah, it's getting close. It can't come soon enough, Gil. I want to enjoy some summer, obviously, but
yes,
I'm ready. September can come anytime, so I'm ready for some NFL football. But you ready for some trivia to wrap up today's episode?
Let's go for it.
All right, well, there are high hopes, obviously, for this year's Packers team. We've been talking about it. You've heard others talk about it. There's plenty of good reason to talk about it. It was a team that almost ended up playing for an NFC title game in a rebuild year last year in 2023. Expectations are high for the young, high-flying offense and the defense with a new coordinator in charge of Jeff Hafley. Now, speaking of NFL titles, the Packers won their first of 13 NFL championships in 1929. That team finished the season without a loss. They finished 12-0-1. The defense was super dominant, which we're hoping to see this upcoming season. Gil, of those 13 games, how many games did the Packers shut out their opponent?
Wow. Out of 13 games. Now, the league was a lot more low scoring back then.
Yes, it was.
I'm going to go with 7.
You were 1 away 8 times.
Wow.
8 times. But 7 of those games they won. One of those games, that was the 0-0 tie that season. Bonus points if you can name the team who they tied with, Gil, because I never heard of this team until I saw this.
I know the team. It was a long gone team, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets.
How the heck I never even heard of them? Yeah, it's the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Obviously, no longer a pro football franchise. And for more bonus points, Gil, how many points did the defense allow the entire season in Green Bay?
Oh boy, it was very, very low.
It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, 25.
You were close. It was 22.
Wow.
22 total points.
13 games.
Less than 2 points per game. Man, has the NFL changed, man. And holy smokes. 1929, that was their first of 3 consecutive NFL titles. Packers won 3 straight again from 1965 through 1967. Obviously, that was the Vince Lombardi, Bart Starr, Ray Nitschke years. The good old days in Green Bay Packer football, and hopefully some really good old days to come. But, man, I would love to have a defense that just allows like 20 points a game, honestly, and that you can rely on.
22 in a season.
Yeah, 20 points. Yeah, 22 in a season. Yeah, I would. 22 a game would be justifiable, and as long as your defense can hold up when it matters most, that's all I care about now.
Yeah, no play.
Offensive has gotten so good in football, and the rules are very much catered towards the offense too.
Oh, by far. Yeah. I mean, you go back before 1978, it was a very, very different game.
I feel like you could bring crowbars and other tools on the field, and get away with it. Yeah, and I feel like you could just do anything back then. Not so much today. You look at a guy the wrong way, and it's a penalty.
You would be surprised if you went on YouTube and watched some games from the early to mid 70s, which I remember as a kid. You'd be very surprised at what was not penalized back then.
Oh man, all I think is 30 Rock when they're trying to sell Couchtown couches. It's like, what happened to this country? We used to eat metal for breakfast. That's how it felt like with NFL football, where it's like we used to throw metal at our opponents.
That's right.
Yeah. So that just my mind is going all over the place, Gil. I need football.
Yeah, we'll get you. We'll get you there. We'll get you there.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Packers and at GBPackersSean. Stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.